With week 4 in the books, let's take a look at 4 players that I'm looking to trade for in my fantasy football league. Starting first by pairing together 2 underperforming elite running backs in Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall, because the story here is pretty similar for both these guys. The price points should be similar as well based on where they were drafted in your leagues. Starting with Bijan Robinson first, I actually talked about him as a buy in this video before week 3, stating that maybe managers see that he hasn't really lived up to his ADP through 2 weeks and maybe you get like a 5 to 10% discount on him. Well, since then, Bijan has scored 13 and 11 PPR points in weeks 3 and 4. He has failed to rush over 35 yards in both weeks, and in week 3, only caught 2 passes, but at least he did find the end zone. Still, this is not the player that people thought they were getting when they drafted him top 5 overall, to the point where I was even asked yesterday from a follower if we should just consider that Bijan is not who we thought he would be. I am not there though, because if you watch Bijan Robinson, he is still fantastic. It's just that the Falcons offense as a whole is still trying to figure itself out with a new coaching staff, new offensive coordinator. Kirk Cousins is still getting healthy from his Achilles injury last year, and they've played some really tough run defenses that have kind of held Bijan Robinson in check 4 weeks in a row. Kansas City and Pittsburgh are top 3 against the run this year. New Orleans is top 12, and Philly is not far behind them inside the top 15. But the next 5 weeks for Bijan are all plus matchups. It's against Tampa Bay, currently a bottom 10 team versus running backs. Then Carolina, who just bleeds fantasy points to opposing running backs. Seattle is fairly tough, but at least they're at home. Then Tampa Bay again, and then Dallas, who did well against Devin Singletary on Thursday night, but prior to that, gave up 70 yards and a touchdown to Jerome Ford, 180 yards and 4 touchdowns to Alvin Kamara, and 175 yards and 2 touchdowns to Derrick Henry. Oh, and his fantasy playoff schedule goes Vegas, the New York Giants, and the Washington Commanders, which the Giants are average right now against the run, but Vegas and Washington are bottom 11 right now. So more plus matchups for Bijan Robinson at the most important time for fantasy. And did you know that Bijan actually had a 20-yard touchdown called back by a hold this past week? Had that touchdown actually held, he would have scored over 20 fantasy points, his best week on the season, and he would be a top 10 fantasy running back right now, not RB16. So if the Bijan manager in your league is now more panicked that they're not getting the production that they were promised with Bijan Robinson when they drafted him, trade for him immediately. Sell Chuba Hubbard off his 2 monster weeks before Jonathan Brooks gets back. Sell James Cook or Dobbins plus, ETN plus. Sell a wide receiver like Chris Olave. Just go buy Bijan Robinson immediately right now. Now, on to Breece Hall. This one is easy because he just had a bad game this week against Denver, but prior to that, he had scored 18 plus fantasy points all 3 weeks. I mean, do I really need to talk to you about why you should be exploring buying Breece Hall right now? This is the perfect opportunity because I bet that the Breece Hall manager in your league was already kind of upset, maybe a little bit worried about Braylon Allen's usage, and now we just had a week where Breece probably lost them their matchup and Braylon Allen just produced better. I am not worried one bit about Breece Hall. It was a fluke week. It was a blip in the radar. Blame the weather, blame Robert Saleh or Aaron Rodgers, blame the sports books for rigging the games, whatever you need to do. Just use this as an opportunity to buy Breece Hall for the same prices that I listed for Bijan above because he's just that good. But before we move on, I wanted to let y'all know to head over to 4for4.com and sign up for a subscription today to gain access to the industry's best weekly rankings from award-winning ranker for accuracy, John Paulson. Plus, you get access to our start-sit tool, trade calculator, articles, and there are additional packages for DFS and betting content too. Make sure to use the code YouTube at checkout to receive 25% off your annual subscription today. Now, on to wide receiver. There is an opportunity right now to buy an elite first-round talent, not because he's underproducing, but because he's actually been hurt. And of course, I'm talking about A.J. Brown. If you have watched the Eagles at all over the past 3 weeks, including this past Sunday, you would see how obvious it is that Jalen Hurts misses A.J. Brown. He and Saquon Barkley are what makes this offense go, but Brown hasn't played since week 1, and now the Eagles have a bye this week, and it's your last chance to maybe buy A.J. Brown lower than you probably should. This is basically the same argument as Bijan and Breece Hall. I don't need to convince you why buying A.J. Brown is a good thing to do. We all know that he's great, and their schedule after the bye week this week is just beautiful. Browns, Giants, Bengals, Jaguars, Eagles, Commanders, Rams. I mean, Come on, man. And then he gets the Commanders and the Dallas Cowboys in weeks 16 and 17 for your championship run. It is just so freaking perfect and beautiful that A.J. Brown might literally be a league winner this year coming back from the injury. So I'd venture to guess that whoever has A.J. Brown in your league is probably struggling a little bit. They haven't had their first round pick since week 1, maybe because of where they were in the draft. They also have guys like Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs, DJ Moore, Michael Pittman not doing all that well. Maybe it's possible that they drafted Rashee Rice late and now they're even more crushed and they really need a win this week, but A.J. Brown is on bye and they just need a starter. So what you can do is feed them a Chris Olave, feed them a Drake London or a Terry McLaurin as their A.J. Brown replacement, and then add on a very fun name on top of that, like a Chuba Hubbard, a Brian Thomas Jr., a Khalil Shakir. You give them 2 really good starters for this week, but you just upgraded your wide receiver spot dramatically after this bye week. Honestly, I'm sure that there's someone out there who can get A.J. Brown right now for like Wan'Dale Robinson and Trey Tucker. There are definitely people out there that are that desperate or that gullible for points, and I bet you that that trade could probably get done in some redraft leagues. And our last receiver to go by is definitely the cheapest name on today's list. It is just simply Tee Higgins. I think we're on the cusp of a Tee Higgins breakout week, one that could either come this week or next week against Baltimore or the New York Giants defenses. So I want to buy now before that happens. If you just look at the box scores of Higgins' games since coming back from injury this year, you're probably not all that inspired. Week 3, he had 3 catches for 39 yards, didn't even get 7 fantasy points. And this past week, he did have 6 catches for 60 yards, a super solid week, but most people will probably just say, whatever, they played Carolina, Jamar Chase outscored him anyway, why should I care about Tee Higgins? Well, you should care because he has seen 16 targets in 2 weeks. That is the most on the Bengals over that entire span, more than Jamar Chase over the past 2 weeks. And the usage has been tremendous. His film looks fantastic despite the mediocre box score. Since he's ISOing him on the outside as the X receiver, he's running routes at all levels on the field, getting targets at all levels of the field, including deep routes. He just hasn't yet connected with Joe Burrow on a lot of those targets. And in week 3, Burrow missed a wide open Tee Higgins on an end zone target that Tee Higgins did catch, but because of how off target the throw was, he just couldn't get both feet in bounds. In the very next play, Burrow ended up throwing a touchdown to Andre Yoshivas. But just imagine if Higgins caught that touchdown though. He would have 14 and 12 fantasy points in his 2 weeks back, over 100 yards and a touchdown combined on 16 targets. There would be a very different opinion of Tee Higgins than there is now just with that 1 touchdown, let alone if he had connected on any of the other deep passes that they had the past 2 weeks. So while I won't say that Tee Higgins is going completely unnoticed, he is still definitely flying under the radar right now, that I think you can buy him as a wide receiver 3 before he absolutely explodes. I would trade Khalil Shakir for him, or Rashid Shaheed, or Zay Flowers, or upgrade from Cortland Sutton, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, or Jerry Jeudy. You'd be getting who I believe to be an immensely talented receiver, more talented than all the guys that I just named, plus a quarterback upgrade or offensive system upgrade over most or even all of those guys too, and you're buying low on a player with a legitimate history for high-end wide receiver 2 fantasy production.